Hi, welcome everyone. Just give me a minute. Let me get into my system. Welcome, May 18th, 2025. Tonight, a market recap for the week. Moody's lowers credit rating, what it means for Americans. Tourism down. 2 German teenage girls were detained and deported from the United States after arriving in Hawaii. All this plus a whole lot more.
Telling the truth is a revolutionary act.
Yeah. So, again, like I was saying, 2 teenage girls were detained and deported from the United States. All that plus the markets, which will start there. If you like this content, please be kind enough to hit the subscribe button. As always, remember to like, share, comment, and please be respectful of other people's comments as they might not agree with your philosophy. So tonight, welcome to the Sunday night market wrap. I'm your host, Bobby Bones, and I hope that everyone is having a great weekend so far. I wanted to get on and give my perspective over the past week and what is coming for the future, what I believe is coming for the future. So I got invited to give some interviews at the Bitcoin convention in Vegas. Vegas is having a Bitcoin conference because of prior engagements. Plus, I was just out there a few weeks ago. I couldn't make it. But maybe next time I can get out there and do that. I had several really big Bitcoin investors, crypto investors that wanted to talk to me and join me on this platform, but I wasn't able to do it. So I'll get them next time. But I hope everyone at the convention has a good time this week, gets there safe, and gets home safe. Anyway, let's get into it. So gold had a very strong week. Gold rose 5% on the week. We settled at $3,358. Silver also had a nice week, up well over 4% on the week, closing at $33.50 per ounce. Futures tonight are pointing higher as well. So silver and gold has had a 100-to-1 ratio, and that seems to still be intact. You can buy 100 ounces of silver for 1 ounce of gold still. And what I'm advising my listeners and people watching this program is to go out and buy some silver if you cannot afford gold, because I believe silver is going to have a much higher boost, gain percentage-wise, and I believe silver is going to close the 100-to-1 ratio. Talking about gold, let's look at the gold miners and juniors. So the GDX had a nice move up in the week, hitting $50.53, up 7.4% on the week. The JDXJ had a nice move up as well, hitting $64.67, up almost 3% on the week. Now, the dollar got beaten up badly, dropping almost 2%, now hovering right at around 99.10%. Tonight's futures are pointing lower for the dollar. Let's look at the treasury market. The 10-year and 30-year treasuries also got smoked. The 10-year treasury settled just above 4.5%, and the 30-year treasury settled just above 5%. So the stock market was also down on the week. The S&P slipped 2.5%. This was a Sell America trade week. The Dow and the S&P futures both tonight are pointing downward again. U.S. stocks went down. U.S. bonds went down. The dollar got hammered. Meanwhile, people were pulling into safety assets. Gold and silver were up, along with foreign markets and currencies. So there were two main catalysts that happened over the past week that made the sell America trade happen. One was because of Moody's downgrade last Friday, and the other was the House passing Trump's big, beautiful bill, which is big, but it isn't beautiful. And because it's so ugly, it's a sell America trade. I posted, and I was saying that Moody's mistake wasn't lowering the rating. The problem was that Moody's didn't lower their rating sooner. I believe the rating is still too high for the risk you take buying treasuries, because there is no way that we're going to be able to pay back our creditors. So either we will be forced to pay back our creditors with a much weaker dollar, which means they did not receive the amount of purchasing power they expected at the time when they made the purchase, or we will default by offering a lower amount than what we originated with the loans. Maybe we offer 60, 70, maybe 50 cents on the dollar, right? Or maybe we arbitrarily extend the loans. Maybe we take a 30-year, turn it into a 100-year. Maybe we take a 10 and turn it to a 50-year, right? Either way, our creditors are going to get screwed at some point. And this is similar to what Nixon did in the 70s when he defaulted with our creditors, that caused massive inflation and stagflation that lasted over a decade until interest rates went up over 20% to get buyers back in. Today, we couldn't handle 20% because our debt is far too large. So default is the only option, being that government spending is out of control. So anyway, this is what caused the sell America trade this week. So either you lose money through inflation or you lose money through default. Either way, treasuries and the dollar, it's a losing hand. But the damage was even more into focus when this bill got passed in the House, because I believe that Americans who voted for Trump, especially independents that are not so MAGA oriented, expected Trump, Doge, and Republicans to get government federal spending under control. The two big issues where Trump got elected was the border and prices. This bill being passed ruins at least one of Trump's promises to bring down the cost of living and to bring down the federal deficit. Now, I see some of MAGA now really rallying against Trump's bill, like Tucker Carlson and people like that. I know Dave Smith is another person. Joe Rogan's another guy. You know, there was a lot of false optimism, especially with Doge. The two reasons why I did not support Doge, which really surprised a lot of my friends, was because, first, it's unconstitutional, right? There's nothing in the Constitution that gives Trump the power to create a department on his own. And second, I didn't believe that Congress would codify whatever cuts Doge made. And now we see that's what's happening in the House. Now the bill goes to the Senate, and we're going to see what changes they're going to make. But politicians are afraid to do the right thing, and that's why nothing changes. You know, then I made a bet that even if Doge cut, they would most likely get challenged as well, and most of it to get overturned. I thought Trump would give up also too much political capital with creating Doge, and it really did. So looking at tonight, Trump's poll numbers tonight, they're upside down, and it is the independents and some right-leaning voters that he's losing. The vast majority of MAGA voters, the hardcore voters, still haven't abandoned ship. But tonight I could see some cracks in that armor. Plus, I stated, again, I'm going to state it again, Congress would never codify the cuts that Doge was trying to make. Okay? And now it's turning out that a lot of what Doge did, a lot of those numbers are way overinflated. I was betting that Trump would ultimately raise the deficits and the size of government overall. And so far, projections are showing that the deficits under Trump are going to raise anywhere from $4.5 to $7 trillion. You know, MAGA, rightly so, was upset with Biden's Build Back Better, right? Because it added $2.5 trillion. Well, this bill adds at minimal $4.5 trillion. So what's the difference, right? Both parties, you know, they spend like drunken sailors. And I can bet you, as usual, the government will miss their projections by trillions of dollars because they don't account for disasters, wars. So we could really see possibly $10 trillion added to the national debt after this bill gets signed. This is why I call this a budget buster bill, a dollar buster bill, and a Sell America Trade buster bill. Of course, there's no fiscal responsibility or limited government values in this bill. Also, now we just got another re-escalation of tariffs after Trump's de-escalation. You know, Trump keeps going back and forth with the tariffs. That's another problem. Trump said that he's not getting anywhere with the tariffs regarding Europe. But I thought everybody was lining up to kiss his ass. That's what he kept saying. So Trump threatened 50% tariffs on the EU if they didn't play ball. But again, it's not the EU that pays them. Us consumers, us Americans, pay the tariffs. Or we just don't get the product. Either way, Americans are the losers. So between this horrible bill and Moody's downgrade and Trump threatening tariffs on the EU, it's a major Sell America Trade, which will have devastating effects on bond yields, interest rates, and the economies. Now, who knows? I might do this video, and tomorrow maybe Trump says, oh, that's it, the tariffs are off. And, you know, so you just don't know what Trump's going to do at any given moment. Now, all of that uncertainty leads me to my next story, which is that Moody's downgrading us. So Moody's put out a statement, and it reads, "We do not believe that the material multi-year reductions in mandatory spending and deficits will result from current fiscal proposals under consideration. Over the next decade, we expect larger deficits as entitlement spending rises while government revenue remains broadly flat." So what Moody's is saying is that we're going to spend a whole bunch of money and we're going to be in worse shape. What Moody's downgrade of U.S. credit rating means for the U.S. and for our money. Well, I'm going to get into that. The major credit agency cut the United States sovereign credit rating Friday by one notch. So we went from a AAA rating to a AA1 rating. In doing so, it cited the increased burden of the federal government's budget and deficit. Republicans' attempts to make Trump's 2017 cuts permanent as part of the reconciliation package threatened to increase the federal budget by trillions of dollars. Here's why budgets and deficits matter. See, when our credit rating goes down, the expectation is that the cost of borrowing will increase. That's because when a country represents a bigger risk, our creditors, or creditors in general, will demand to be compensated with higher interest rates. So let's say if you're struggling to pay your credit card bills, they're likely to become much more expensive. amid Moody's downgrade, as banks demand higher interest rates due to the higher risk. Plus economic uncertainty, especially regarding tariffs, which still is a wild card in the economy because nobody knows what Trump is going to do. Like I said, we could wake up tomorrow, Monday morning, or Tuesday, and Trump could just do an about face on everything. Or he could go nuclear, right? We don't know. So let's say you're running a small business or you're an investor, you need to borrow money or to replenish your stockpile inventory. So you don't know. So borrowing can get much harder and much more difficult to secure. Now, Chairman Powell of the Federal Reserve stated last week also that this downgrade will only drive inflation and increase job losses. So he is now getting closer to mentioning stagflation. The downgrade will also push up mortgage rates, personal rates, credit card rates, which will further weaken the confidence in the U.S. and abroad. Since mortgage rates are largely tied to treasury yields and the economy, 30-year mortgages are going to be mostly correlated, long-term rates are already moving higher. To my friends who voted for Trump, I ask you, did you vote for this? And sadly, 90% of the media are not going to go into detail like I just did and explain why all of this is really so devastating for the economy. So now, we were talking about tariffs and how devastating they are to private businesses and corporations and the consumer. Well, now it's going to bring me to my next story because now we're getting real actual numbers. These aren't projections. Well, some are projections, but mostly real numbers. So tourism is now down, and now we have some hard numbers to look at. So the U.S. economy lost over $20 billion in retail sales in just a month as international tourists stay away due to fears, plus Trump's insults and Trump's tariff wars. So I want you to check out these numbers. Canada tourists are down 23%. Mexico is down 26%. South America, 15%. Africa, down 12%. Europe, down 19%. And Asia is down 8%. The biggest drop was our Canadian friends to the north. Many Canadians helped boost border towns along with northern border friends that have now become boycotters, right, instead of consumers and traders. Businesses are showing a 70% drop off in business since the trade war. Okay, so if you're in a border town and you rely, people come and go on the border. If you're American, you go to Canada, right? You go spend a weekend or whatever. Canadians come to our side. So now that's all ceased. Not only are our businesses losing customers, but if they want to keep the shelves full, they have to pay 30% plus more for the same merchandise they could have gotten before the trade war. I mean, this is completely unsustainable and why protectionism doesn't work. Estimates are showing anywhere from $150 billion to $200 billion that could be lost this year alone. If things do not turn around, we're talking lots of jobs and companies that are going to get destroyed. And, this is really important stuff. And, from a libertarian perspective, we don't like protectionism. I don't like the hand of government to come in and say what you can buy and what you can't buy, what you can do with your body, and, all of this stuff. We want to be left alone and let individuals decide for themselves what products they want to buy and what deals they want to make and what everybody wants to do with each other. It's none of the government's business. Well, this is going to take us to our next story, which all kind of comes together. And probably why this is going to help further people not coming to the United States. So check out this story. So there were 2 German teenage tourist girls who were detained and deported after arriving in the United States and Hawaii. Because, now check this out, they were detained because they didn't have hotel reservations. I mean, how ridiculous is this? Maria LaPierre and Charlotte Poi, both recent high school graduates from Rostock, Germany, embarked on a world tour. You know, they were visiting countries like Thailand and New Zealand, according to German authorities. And what happened was they booked their trip. When they booked their trip, it took an unexpected turn. When they arrived in Hawaii, they got detained because they did not pre-book their hotel reservations. You know, I mean, just look at how much our government is monitoring people. I mean, is this their job? You know, so they arrived in Honolulu on March 18th, planning a 5-week exploration trip on the Hawaiian Islands. And then what they were going to do was they were going to continue to California and then Costa Rica. Now, here's the thing. You know, they got to Thailand, they got to New Zealand, and yet, you know, they could freely go there and go party and have a good time. But yet when they come to the United States, they get arrested. So New Zealand and Thailand is more open society than we are. That really bothers me. You know, so these were 2 young ladies, clearly with money, that wanted to visit the U.S. and in no way was a threat to our country. The duo spent 7 days in a detention center before being deported, despite holding valid visa travel documents and having no prior record. How does this help our country? You know, when I travel, I don't always pre-book hotels. Matter of fact, the last time I drove across the country, I was heading home. I was leaving Vegas, and I was going to stay in New Mexico. And my buddy out in Reno, who was in New Mexico and found a really cool hotel, casino, he recommended me, hey, you know, go check out this hotel. I've been there with my wife, and, you know, if I had pre-booked a hotel, I would have never seen that hotel. Sometimes I like to get on the ground and check out the area before I get a hotel, because I don't want a hotel in a bad neighborhood, like, you know. So sometimes it pays to not pre-book a hotel, especially if you're in a new area and you don't know it. And so, again, you know, I believe in the free movement of people. Of course, we have to stop criminals. Of course, we have to stop, you know, people who are coming into our country to, you know, cause harm onto other people. But from a libertarian perspective, I don't like all the surveillance and, you know, all of this. Oh, we're just going to, you know, lock people up for a week. Now, these 2 girls get sent back home. We lost their business, their family and friends now back in Germany. Maybe German news put out the story. You know, you're talking tens of thousands of people now who might have come to the United States now will never come. How does this help our economy? How does this make us more free? How does this help you? It doesn't. Just a quick reminder, if you like this type of content, please hit that little subscribe button. It does not cost anything, and it helps me reach more people and allows me to provide more content, better content. You know, look, I'm new in this game, and I'm self-learning. And please, you know, send me a message. Let me know any tips or anything I can do to give me better quality videos and things maybe you want me to talk about. So I appreciate that. Well, I'm going to put this on different platforms. So my YouTube is youtube.com/AppRoomMedia. So go there, subscribe, like, share, and comment. And I appreciate you. And I'm going to give a closing statement. So in life, you learn that you're here today and gone tomorrow. If you have a goal or a dream that you have been thinking about or working on, you must stay focused and not get caught up in all the noise. You will always have people cheering you on or putting you down. It is very easy to get distracted by negative people who don't care or have your best interest at heart. Remember, the one opinion that matters the most is the opinion you have of yourself. So think highly of yourself, reach for the stars, right? Never give up on what you know to be true, and know that you have great worth, right? You were put here for a reason. And that you can achieve greatness. I do not know who this message is for, but I hope it finds you well. I hope everyone has a great week. Stay healthy. Remember to please take care of yourself and each other. Remember, freedom isn't free. And people have suffered and died for our freedoms. So, tomorrow's Memorial Day, and I want to thank all of those that served. Have a wonderful day off. Have a wonderful day. God bless you, and God bless the United States. And I hope to see you guys on the next one. Take care. Thank you. Bye.